Hi there and welcome back to the Hand Spinner Review Spot YouTube channel. You can click the link in the description box below to take you to our Facebook page with all manner of reviews and features and articles. We're going to look today at a very widely available spinner. This is the Sunkong Triangle EDC hand spinner, fidget toy, ultra durable with pure copper body, hybrid ceramic bearings, spinning time up to 6 minutes, from Amazon. I am sure this has a real name, but that is what it's listed at under the description that is given on the Amazon website where this was purchased. So that's what we're going to go with. So it's a copper-bodied spinner, and it's one of the hundreds of options that are now coming out of China as budget metal spinners with decent performance to try and convince you to go for something like this over maybe a piece made by Rotorblade or Zero Feud or one of the many producers in America or the UK. So before we get into the spinner itself, let's have a quick look at some size comparisons. Okay, so we'll put some tri-spinners in here. We've got the Axis Micro. As you can see, it's not a million miles off of that size. We've got a torque bar, because, well, why not? We've got a tri-stubby. Again, you can see the arms are a little longer than the tri-stubby. And what else should we put in there? We'll put a Turnian by NTO Designs. So there you go. You can see it's slightly larger than some of the tri designs on the table here, but it's still not a silly size. It's not unwieldy in any way, and it's relatively compact, really, particularly when I show you how thin the body is in 1 second. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the overall design. As you can see, it's a very thin piece. The body is, as they say on the website, pure copper. I don't know exactly what that means from this seller, but it's copper of some description. It has brass buttons. You see these little cutouts, some little marks which should create some concentric circles as it's spinning. Yeah, it's quite a pleasing design, really. You've got these chamfers which move around the outside edge, and when you give it a spin, it spins quite smoothly. You can see on a single finger. It's not bad at all. There's a little bit of wobble in that button that may or may not be showing up while you're looking at it through the screen, but it is there. But it's not severe by any means. On a forward flick, it's also relatively comfortable. The chamfers aren't bad. It's quite a weighty spinner, so you might get some finger fatigue from that. In truth, any copper spinner of this sort of size is probably going to give you that kind of sensation. When you move it through its axis, there's a little more wobble there than you might find on some other tri-spinners or, more than bipole spinners. But let's have a look at why that might be. Because one of the key features on Chinese spinners tends to be this interesting bearing retention system. Rather than being press fit or glue fit, they tend to do this bearing cage assembly where you have the bearing contained within a screwed piece, which results in the bearing actually being retained itself through vertical pressure rather than the horizontal pressure that you'd get on lots of those other ones that we've just mentioned. In other words, this is more along the lines in terms of containment, something like the Trillium, than it is many other high-end pieces. Now, this is a 606 bearing. It's bigger than an R188, but smaller than the 608 bearings. As you can see, it's hybrid ceramic, but it's a cageless hybrid ceramic. This is something that you see a lot on these Chinese spinners, and something that I personally am really not a big fan of. You also see it in quite a few of the Pepiaka spinners from Custom Knife Factory, and the reason I'm not a fan of these is twofold. One, you probably won't be able to see in the video, so you're going to have to take my word for it, but effectively any time that the bearings are all at one side, you end up with quite a large gap, and that means that you have more play in that direction within the bearing than you do if the balls are, let's try and get them to evenly disperse. No, they won't even do it now. But if the balls are evenly dispersed. The other thing I don't like is when you're vertically spinning, you can hear the balls connecting with each other. I might be able to show you when I've actually got it back together. Probably won't be able to hear that, but you can hear them sort of clashing against each other. It's not the end of the world. It's not something that anyone needs to really care about a great deal unless they're slightly crazy like me, but it gets on my nerves a little. However, I do like the fact that the cage system clamps the bearing from the top and therefore doesn't risk any deformation of the outside race like some other forms do. So let's put it together. As you can see, it's very straightforward. And this is actually starting to be used, this sort of setup, with there we go, with more expensive designs as well. You'll see the also Chinese made Crusader from Casfly. They're also using a similar setup, and it can be very, very effective, and it's certainly something that I'd like to see more high-end producers trying to use in their designs. You can see I went for the word use there because I couldn't think of a better one. So yeah, it's a perfectly acceptable spinner, and at a price of about £25 in the UK, it's hard to argue with. Do I like the bearing? Not particularly, but from a functional point of view, this is not a bad spinner at all. It's hard to find too many considerable downsides with, particularly at the price. I struggle to really criticise it. Sure, the cutouts don't really do a huge job. Obviously, this is no zero feud compass where the gaps between them are so small that you get a perfect ring that makes it look like the spinner's floating. That's a lot to ask for £24, but it's still not bad at all. It's slightly noisy, as I say, you get that clicking sound which you may or may not be able to hear. It's fairly subtle, that I personally am not a big fan of, but overall there's very few bad things to say when you take into account the price, and obviously you're gaining an awful lot of value based on the cost of manufacture and the labour costs within China. So there, this is the Sunkong. I don't exactly know what to call it. It's a tri-spinner, and yeah, sure, if you want a relatively cost-effective, a very cost-effective really, tri-spinner, you don't know whether you're going to love spinners or you're not particularly interested in having something that's more high-end, there's no shame in that. And if you like this one, I have very little hesitation in saying, sure, go for it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Catch you in the next video. Bye.